Hello, everyone. I am so glad to be with you this evening, and I thank you so much, Dr. Singleton, for this introduction. I want to say special thank you to Dr. Dudley, to Dr. Isaac Castaneda. All three among them are good friends in addition to being colleagues of mine, and I'll be excited to introduce you to two other colleagues and friends of mine as well, as we are all in God's mission enterprise together. I'm so glad that Dr. Campbell was so intentional about indicating the roots of home mission societies, which are very much grounded in New York City, at Mulberry Street and Mariners Temple, such rich American Baptist history right in the heart of New York City. And to open, I just share briefly about the home mission societies. I just want to offer as we begin, the American Baptist Home Mission Societies, as we have really been from our beginning in 1832, has been focused on cultivating Christ-centered leaders and disciples, bringing healing and transforming to communities across the United States and Puerto Rico. And Reverend Brenda Lammie and Mr. Christian Esteban, who you'll be hearing from more in a few moments, as we call them as missionaries, or home mission societies describes people we're calling passionaries, who are everywhere and in every opportunity being witnesses for Jesus Christ and using their gifts to promote the gospel. And so you will hear how Reverend Lammie and Reverend Esteban are doing that in their respective communities. And they are significant partners of home mission societies as we seek to really focus on several priorities that range in leadership of identifying, cultivating, and connecting innovators, creators, and leaders, of supporting and exploring Christian faith formation from infancy through adulthood. That's discipleship. Creating opportunities for collaborative action, social trends, and missional issues around various expressions of what it means to be the body of Christ. We know that collaboration was God's idea from the very beginning, that we would bring our gifts together and work together as witnesses of God. To partner with diverse ethnic, cultural, and language groups to foster a movement, to eradicate forms of racism, and to provide resources and training for Indigenous and culture-specific leadership development, create space for intercultural engagement, and model environments that exemplify diversity and inclusivity. That is really who American Baptist, we strive to be. This is who we are at our best, to recognize the multicultural and multicolored face of the church and of God's creation, and partnering with and equipping persons in public witness and advocacy. And so both Brenda and Christian, through their ministries, are really helping to address some of these priorities. I want to share briefly about Judson Press, which is an opportunity to, again, be resource. That is what American Baptist Home Mission Societies wants to be alongside of you as you are leading in your respective communities. We want to be able to provide the kinds of stories you'll hear in a moment, but then also to be a resource for you in strengthening the ministry that you're providing. So at this time, I want to, as I said, we will hear first from Reverend Lammie, and who comes to us from Indian Orchard, Massachusetts. Reverend Lammie is a preacher, a teacher, a social worker, nonprofit administrator, mental health clinician, mother, wife, a soror, and friend. And as she holds all of those different roles, assumes all of those different responsibilities, as the executive director of the New Life Center for Recovery and pastor of Greater New Life Baptist Church, Greater New Life Christian Church. New Life Center of Recovery is a Christian-based mental health clinic for people suffering from substance abuse. This center is licensed through Massachusetts Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Abuse, and accredited through the Joint Commission. She says of this ministry that our vision is to be a dynamic center of recovery where clients can discover hope and healing to overcome the problems and the pains of addiction. Reverend Lammie, let us hear from you.
Good evening, everyone. What a joy it is to be here to speak with each of you. And my goal, my joy is to just share my heart this evening around what God has done through our ministry, to be able to meet the needs of his children and to be able to serve the best way we can. It certainly has been a learning experience. We did not know everything we were getting into in the beginning. But I must begin with my good friend who has gone on home to be with the Lord, and that was Reverend Dr. Morris Stimmage Norwood. The Lord brought the two of us together for this ministry. I was pastoring in Hartford, Connecticut, and he was in Massachusetts. I happened to visit his church, and he and I began to get in contact with each other. We became prayer partners. And then we began to share our heart. We began to share our concerns about what was going on in our communities, in our congregations, the struggles people were going through. He himself had been an administrator in a nonprofit mental health program. He also was an addictions counselor and a mental health counselor. Myself, I had a licensed social worker by profession, and also pastoring an inner city church and working primarily around child welfare issues, as well as parenting groups and just looking how we can strengthen families. So as we met and we began to just share what was on our hearts and just kind of think about what can we do, what in the system wasn't working. How were people's needs being addressed? Were people's needs being addressed? And we began to talk about how so many people have felt like they were a mouse in a wheel, just going through the circles, not, being told you need to do this, you haven't done this, and they would be put into all types of groups, and they would have a laundry list of things that the court or the judge would tell them that they had to do. They would often feel overwhelmed and frustrated and never really got better. Never found that true healing. The families really struggled in getting stronger and finding that healing and just getting to a place where they felt like they had control and manageable lives. As we began to think about, well, if we did, so we said, well, we would like to do something, and what would that be? And we began to share what was on our hearts. And we said, well, if we do this, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel per se, but we wanted to draw from the experiences that we already had, both of us working in nonprofit agencies, but also with a faith-based perspective, being able to truly approach the healing and the need for people to be able to just be who they are and to know that they weren't being judged negatively, that people were hearing them, and to find a platform of bringing many people together to collaborate and to work together in a way that is helpful to the families that we work with. This ministry was birthed through prayer. We would pray every morning, and we just asked the Lord to lead us. And as we began to just formulate it, and we contacted the state, and that began our journey around applying for licensure. Again, both of us had worked in established agencies. We had never formed an agency before. And so we weren't exactly sure how they would accept us as a faith-based entity. what was interesting is that we were allowed to use our church board. We did not have to set up a separate 501c3. We were a church that just desired to do ministry, and they licensed us that way. Our church board was our board. So part of what we had to do was to truly educate the people on the board at church around what this work, the vision of this work. And it's just amazing how God just put so many good people in our path that taught us. There were things that we didn't know as we're going through the application process, but we just reached out, and God always put the right people in our path. So we wrote our license to the state and received that in 2011. We also purchased, and then Father Bill, who was a Catholic priest across the street from us, he came over and he was telling us he was going to sell his rectory. We had already been talking about establishing some sober homes, but again, we didn't have the finances. We were just putting our heads together, envisioning how we could help people in this area. I was not a person that was experiencing substance abuse. Reverend Morris was. So he was kind of my guide and teacher in this particular thing, but he was the visionary, and I was kind of the one that put the flesh on the bones, if you will. And together we worked as a solid team. Father Bill came over and he was sharing with Pastor Morris that he was selling the rectory. Reverend Morris calls me and tells me, and I said, okay, let's pray. So I said, let's go lay hands on the building. And he's like, lay hands on the building. I've never done that before, but okay. So off we went, we laid hands on the building, and we began to pray and ask the Lord to provide what we needed for the resources to purchase this building. We were able to purchase on the property was it was a rectory for nuns. There are 10 bedrooms and large, beautiful bedrooms, a beautiful home. And on the same property was a small house, which we affectionately called the Little House. That's where we have families in recovery, a family at a time. So the Covenant House was born in August 8th of 2011. And at that time, we started with one woman that I knew from the church I was from in Hartford. And she came in, and she was the very first one. And from that time, we probably had, I'm going to say, about 80 women who we have served in Covenant House. About 3 years later, we were able to establish Powerhouse for Men. And that's been a blessing as well. That is a home that has 5 bedrooms in it, and it's about a mile from the church. So Covenant House is directly across from the church, the Little House as well, Powerhouse very close. So it helps us to be able to maintain close proximity, to be able to stay active in their daily lives. It really takes a community, our church family. And I must say it evolved, them understanding how to work with people going through substance abuse issues. In the houses, it is recovery. And again, we've learned along the way. We do some things, but had to grow into other things in terms of what it took to really run a ministry that worked for people. We set up house guidelines. In these guidelines, they really looked at healthy living, sober living, and faithful living. And 30 seconds. Okay, so I have to wind up. The time flies, amen. But I also want to talk about, so we have the sober homes. The other thing was we established an outpatient dual diagnosis mental health and recovery ministry, which means that they have to have had some sort of history in substance abuse. And so with that, we're able to provide case management as well as recovery coaching, counseling, and group work, all those things. And so I hope that this was helpful for you. And the main thing that I want to leave with, there was a mantra that stays in my spirit all the time, and that is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. We don't always have all the answers, but we do have a willingness of spirit and a passion to make a difference. And that's where we started, and God, he knit all the pieces together. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lammie. And as I said, really what this time is designed for, what the leaders of the Metro New York staff have designed this time for, is to give the participants, the people who are gathered, time to ask you questions. And so one of the initial questions I want to ask, and then invite others to ask, Reverend Lammie, can you share with us one story of transformation, of significant transformation for one of the participants in your ministry?
Yes, I had to think long and hard about which one. And the young lady, I'll call her PK. And the reason I selected her was because she really got what it meant around transformation and healing, and then giving back. This was a woman who was in her 50s when she came to us. She came to us from jail with a bracelet on. And what that meant was basically she was under house arrest unless she was approved to go to certain things. They had already established a job for her to attend. When she first came, she started work right away. We also have, as I shared earlier, we had certain programming that we offer to support them. And so the case management, the counseling, group work, so forth. And she was finding it really stressful to be able to attend, to go to work and then to attend certain things. And so everybody is different. And so while we do have house guidelines, everyone has a plan for themselves because each person has separate needs. She was bold enough to tell the jail, the police officers, I came here for my recovery. I came here to get better. I did not come here to work. I could have done that on my own. I need to do this program. And they allowed her to do it. It really is unheard of because usually they're not that lenient, but they allowed her to stop working. She was able to it was amazing how quickly she got on SSI. So you could just see God all in this whole situation in her life. And she set her mind to truly working on herself. She was really, really rough around the edges. She used to get on everybody's nerves. A lot of the girls that were in the house, she was bossy, at times, sometimes bully, but it came from a right place. She wanted to make sure the house was locked up. She wanted to make sure things were done right. So when somebody didn't do something right, she would be on it. But what she did was she had given her heart to the Lord. She was faithful in her Christian studies. She was faithful in the things that she needed to do for herself. She was able to get her learner's permit. Then she was able to get a driver's license. Then she got her a car. She saved her money. Now what she's doing is she opened up a AA group, NA group that she herself started because she was trying to meet the needs in a particular community. And the other thing that I really admire about her is that she goes to the jail and she ministers to women that are still there. And so she understood what it took that other people were helping her. And she now is passing it forward by being a blessing. She would give people rides when she got her car. She would give people rides to their doctor's appointments to make sure they got to meetings. And so she really always says, she every day she still texts me to this day and sends me some encouraging word. She became very involved with the American Baptist Women's Ministry in Massachusetts. She would be at every retreat. They got to know her. People around the state got to know her. So she was just such a joy and still is. And I ask that you would pray for PK. And I'm just so grateful. I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot from her, what it took in recovery, what it took to, what they needed, what she needed to be able to help for herself to be restored holistically, mind, body, soul, and spirit.
Beautiful and powerful. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, but I want to, and I do actually, someone is saying they're praying for PK, but I want to ask questions. Let's just open it up for one question for Reverend Lammie. And I'm not sure if they have the ability to unmute themselves, or you can put it in the chat. Well, I'll know. Oh, thank you. So Adam is sharing with us that PK, yes, is such a transformational leader, absolutely, in the sense of after, as you said, Brenda, that she was blessed and she is a blessing. And so that is among the qualities of a transformational leader, that once they have been, that someone has been transformed, they find other opportunities, other people who they can walk alongside of in their journey of transformation. So thank you for that.
And she's a passionary. The journey was hard because she had to do a lot of soul searching. When you're on the street, there's a lot of habits that have to be unlearned to be able to think about how to come back into society where you're interacting with a lot of different people. So just how you talk and what you do and morals and values and walking by truth and, so many things. And she used to get mad often. She had a lot of anger issues in the beginning. And she used to have a phrase, I have to sit with myself. And that meant, let me pull away, let me just not react, let me think about it. And then we would come back and we would talk about it. And that really is what helped her a lot as well.
Wonderful. And so we're going to pause a moment and we'll continue what I would have done, but I won't call on someone now. After we hear from Christian, I would love to invite someone in the community to pray for Reverend Brenda, and then to pray for Christian if there's an opportunity to do that. If not, we know that the prayers are going up, even as people have put in the chat that they are praying for PK. Praying for you, Reverend Brenda, for your team,
Amen. Amen.
And for all of those who are experiencing the ministry that you are leading. Thank you so much for that. So we are going to transition to hear from a Christian who is coming to us from Fullerton, California, and the executive director of JOYA Scholars in Fullerton, California, Southern California, between San Diego, north of San Diego, south of Los Angeles. This organization, JOYA Scholars, serves junior high and high school students who dream of becoming first-generation college students. Christian, he believes that mentorship is key to serving scholars, Latinx, and immigrant neighbors, and through this vision, this acts to help them access higher education, and how higher education has the power to break the cycle of poverty. And there are some pillars that really drive the work of this ministry. It's around mutual kinship, cascade mentoring, where in one generation or one student mentors another as they've experienced had positive experiences, and Indigenous leadership. Christian joined the JOYA Scholars team in 2015 as a mentor himself, as a volunteer, and is now serving as the executive director, and is responsible for staff's supervision, fund development, community outreach, vision, and planning. And I know tomorrow they're preparing for a wonderful celebration that I believe Christian is going to share with us about as well. We're eager to hear from you, Christian.
Lisa, thank you so very much for the invitation to be here. And everyone, it is so wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for this time. As Lisa had mentioned, in about 24 hours, we'll be streaming our virtual fundraiser. Unfortunately, they're all virtual these days. Introduce who we are, and then I'm going to play a quick 4-minute video that actually our students created, but As Lisa mentioned, I'm the executive director of JOYA Scholars in Fullerton in Southern California. We serve children of low-income, Latinx, and immigrant families. When JOYA first began 12 years ago, not 10 years ago, as it might actually say there, 12 years ago, we actually discovered, our board founders discovered that there had not been a college graduate living in our neighborhoods that anybody could tell us about, at least in the last 10 years. So in the Garnett district, where our youth live and our families, our communities are home to gangs, drugs, violence. Less than 50% of the adults in our neighborhood possess high school diplomas and less than 10% possess college degrees. The average household median income is around $34,000 a year, and our neighborhoods are incredibly overcrowded, which has been a concern over the last 15 months in particular. So we serve future first generation college students, which is how we love to refer to them as, through 4 primary mediums. Number 1, mentoring, academic mentoring. Number 2, tutoring. Number 3, a college application academy for high school seniors. And number 4, for our parents, a parent academy. I'll go ahead and play this quick video, which we are going to be premiering tomorrow night. And so I'm happy to share this with you all now. Just a quick caveat, our students, again, created this video as an overview of our organization. They decided to create this in a newscast style format, so it's a little bit unorthodox. And so if you'll bear with me. One last note as I enter the video, please raise the volume on your computers. I've been told that the video volume is quite low, so once I start playing it, please feel welcome to raise your volume. I'll see you in about 3.5 minutes.
This is JOYA Scholars News Network.
During the 2020-2021 school year, JOYA Scholars College Readiness programs have impacted more students than ever before. Between September 2020 and April 2021, students have participated in 1,800 hours of virtual programming to over 100 junior high, high school, and college students and their parents. During the height of the pandemic, our staff and volunteers have run, on average, 217 hours of student programming per month, or 54 hours per week. In total, volunteer mentors and tutors have served over 1,200 hours.
Here's how we served our students and families in the 2020-2021 school year. Mentoring. Students received bi-weekly, one-on-one academic mentoring. Mentors offered guidance and accountability and fill a relational and knowledge gap for our students.
High schoolers explored college pathways, FAFSA, DREAM Act and financial aid, study skills and learning tools, career exploration, brag sheets and resumes, and imposter syndrome and first-gen experiences. Our panel of professionals introduced students to local professionals, including a Fullerton police officer, an engineer, and an FBI agent. Our panel of professors connected students with professors in business, biology, and intercultural studies from Cal State Fullerton, Vanguard University, and Biola University.
College representatives from Cal Poly Pomona and Cal State Fullerton brought the college tours to us this year. Plus, Lizette and I took students on virtual tours of our alma maters, Chapman University and Vassar College. We charged our batteries by exploring coping strategies we could all use during a stressful and isolating year. And Lizette and I facilitated relaxing JOYA Scholars Paint Nights. Lizette also hosted virtual game nights.
That is correct.
And for JOYA, she moderated a virtual escape room where we had to solve puzzles to escape from Christian, the mad scientist. Tutoring. Students engage with their tutors on a weekly basis in STEM-based subjects ranging from junior high math and science to advanced calculus and chemistry. During COVID-19, tutors have dedicated themselves to finding ways to keep their students engaged and learning over Zoom. College Apps Academy. Weekly sessions offer focused support for high school seniors as they navigate the college application process. Brenda, our college apps instructor, walks seniors through their UC and CSU apps, personal insight questions, how to leverage scholarships, grants, and loans, EOP apps, honors programs, and promise programs. Parent Academy.
In Parent Academy, parents learned how to support their kids at each grade level, how K-12 schools are structured, how to support students in STEM subjects, how AP and honors classes are designed for success, how to explore technical and vocational education options, how to prepare for the post-high school pathway that works best for them, how to pay for college, and resources for undocumented students and families. This is what some of our parents have said about our Parent Academy.
Como yo tengo 4 niños pues y de diferentes edades, entonces pues a mí me interesa saber porque también ahorita mi hijo va a pasar al 12. Me gustó mucho cómo para aplicar para las becas de FAMSA. La verdad que sí, es bueno todo esto, muy interesante y me gustó mucho que dijeron también que pueden ustedes ayudar para cuando ya se quiera aplicar. Pues hay personas que ayudan.
Sí.
Pues eso también sí me agradó, dije, porque sí es bastante difícil. Dicen que para uno solito que nunca ha hecho eso, como es el primero,
Sí.
que va a aplicar o que va a querer entrar a una universidad. Y pues gracias, ¿verdad? Gracias a ustedes que nos están ayudando, porque a veces sí es difícil y como es la comunidad hispana, a veces no buscamos muchas oportunidades o muchas de estas clases, ¿verdad?
Sí, por eso estamos aquí para apoyarlos a todos ustedes.
Now it's time to recognize this year's graduating seniors.
Really our vision, as hopefully some of you saw from our kids, that every student who has the desire to go to college will have the resources they need to graduate from a 4-year university, that they'll gain meaningful vocational experiences in a fulfilling career pathway, and have an opportunity to develop as leaders within their communities. Ultimately, in doing so, we believe our youth will become leaders within their communities and transform their communities from within. So I'll go ahead and stop there now as an introduction.
Christian, thank you so much. I think all of us were ready to see the graduates, their pictures and celebrate with them, even virtually. So we ask you to convey our celebration and joy and excitement for them. Please convey that to them as you gather tomorrow evening.
Thank you.
So one of the questions that we wanted to open, and then I'll ask a second question of Christian. I'll open it to the larger group, and then we'll give opportunity for the community to ask questions of either Brenda or Christian. But as I asked Brenda, I'll ask you, Christian, can you share the story, one story of one of the JOYA scholars where you have experienced significant transformation? We heard the one testimonial in the video, but what story would you share?
Of course, well, one family that is so near and dear to my heart, I won't, of course, name them, but I'll name our student. Her name is Carmen. If you can imagine, here in Fullerton, we live a stone's throw from some incredible institutions of higher education: Cal State Fullerton, Fullerton College, amazing. And yet our students, our kids, they grow up in these neighborhoods a stone's throw away, not necessarily believing that those institutions are placed there for them. So what we try to do at JOYA Scholars is try to bring in the right people at the right time to have the right conversations with our students. And to that end, to be able to rewrite the narrative and expectations that the students have for themselves. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Carmen, she joined JOYA Scholars as an 11th grade student. She was so incredibly shy. She's such a sweetheart. And she lives right here in the neighborhood, in the Garnett neighborhood. She enrolled in mentoring, tutoring, College Apps Academy as a 12th grader, and her mom enrolled in Parent Academy. And what did we find out? Her number of advocates grew around her. So as she was a part of those different programs, suddenly she had a mentor. She had a tutor who she saw, both of whom every week. She had a College Apps instructor to help her walk through the complex College Apps process. Her mom had a Parent Academy instructor to be able to bring the college readiness conversation into the home. And of course, our program coordinators. So if you can imagine Carmen surrounded by 5 or 6 people who she saw on a regular basis, who became her advocates. Number 2, she then inspired her little brother to join the program, little Francisco, who joined as an 8th grader and is now an 11th grade student, actually, and is looking forward to being a senior. Francisco joined JOYA Scholars, and he is such the STEM wizard now. He has his own mentor, he has his own tutors, and he's doing the same that Carmen did. And number 3, what we found through Carmen was that her family became advocates themselves. So Carmen and Francisco have one older brother and one older sister. And around the time that Carmen and Francisco were in the JOYA High School program, their older brother and sister decided to go to college as well. So they enrolled in our local Cal State Fullerton and Cal Poly Pomona. And a little bit after that, they actually became mentors of their own. And they are now mentoring junior high who are now high school students of their own. And last but certainly not least, their mother, Lupe, who is one of my favorite people, who works so hard. And I think she's graduated from our Parent Academy course like 3 or 4 times at this point, because she keeps coming back to be able to share with our other parents her experiences. I remember, well, Lupe, for a living, just to let everybody know, and I'll wrap up here, but she cleans homes for a living. And about 1.5 years ago, before COVID, I spent the day with the family just cleaning a home. Quickly found out that it wasn't for me, and that I have so much respect for the work that they do. And I was talking to Lupe as we were cleaning this house on a Saturday, and Lupe described the kids' upbringing. She described how she was so passionate about them not courting gang involvement growing up on the streets. And how all the kids after school would go and clean houses with her, and all 5 of them would clean houses. That way they could put food on the table. But Lupe said her kids were not allowed to come with her to work to clean houses if they had homework to do or if they had a test coming up. And so she would do extra stuff when her kids couldn't be there with her because she wanted better for them. I'll skip forward and I'll end here. Carmen's graduation day, which I had the opportunity to be there with the family. And I actually ordered one of those giant cutouts of Carmen's head. So she loved that, seeing that in the audience. This was 2019, right before COVID. And I remember Carmen walked up on stage to accept her diploma. And when she walked up onto the stage, her shoes, she's wearing these uncomfortable looking wedges. Her wedges, one of them like exploded because it hit the stage in a really bad way. And we saw her stumble on the stage. And then we saw her gather herself, and she went to go get her diploma. After the ceremony, we're all taking pictures, and I'm talking to Carmen. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what was going through your head when I thought you weren't going to make it? And she said, Christian, you know what? It's a couple of years ago. I didn't know how this day was going to turn out, but when my shoe basically blew up, I knew that there was absolutely nothing at this point that would stop me from going the last 10 feet to go get my diploma. And that was beautiful. And I was taking a picture of the families and the family all together. And I had one last conversation with Lupe. She was holding Carmen's busted shoe. And I said, Lupe, go be with your family. Do you want me to go find a trash can for this shoe? And she said, no. And I was a little worried. I was concerned when she said no, but she said, no, don't throw the shoe away. I'm going to keep the shoe. This is a reminder that absolutely nothing in this life is going to stop my kids from getting to where they want to be. I love Carmen, and I love, the story of her family there. I'll go ahead and stop there, but thank you for letting me share.
And I'm sure there is more to that family story that you would share, but even going back to Adam's comment about PK, clearly Carmen and Lupe are transformational leaders as they are, and I think that's part of the cascading mentorship. But the second question I wanted to ask you, as we have these ministry leaders gathered from Metro New York, and knowing even among them, imagining among you, there are some first generation college graduates among you. But Christian, can you tell us, among some of the greatest challenges for first generation college students to overcome, what are they? And how can a congregation support a first generation college student?
To answer this question, that makes me think of our board chair. Her name is Linda, and she's such a fierce advocate for higher ed policy for Latinx communities, and she now works for the campaign for the California Community Colleges statewide system. But she tells the story of growing up, and I remember my own mom telling the story of my grandparents growing up. But her parents grew up letting her know that they wanted her to work with her brain, not with their back or with their hands. And her father was a gardener, and he would work in the fields all day, every day. And the way she describes how her parents treated her growing up was, we as kids are the product of our parents' hard work and their wildest dreams. But the way she describes it, hard work alone doesn't actually open every single door, because we see in and of itself how hard immigrant families in particular work day in and day out, such as Lupe, and yet they still face barriers. And so what are these barriers? Some of them are, for example, not being able to afford expensive tutoring after school or SAT, ACT exam prep, not having retirement funds to be able to pay for college, having a household situation where parents have to work more and are home less. Students get less words read to them, and students have to become caregivers for other siblings in and of themselves, as opposed to prioritizing their own education. So the students have to balance a home life, and if they want to go to school, if they want to go to college, they also have to take on their own part-time work to be able to pay for that. So some solutions, and this is how it affected Linda, was I need to become a first-generation equity advocate. And what does that mean? To Linda, it meant pursuing a career where she could push forward equity-minded policy. So for example, financial aid, federal work study, so students are able to work in schools and pay for their tuition. And also policy that helps universities have faculty who look like our own local community to make sure our students believe they belong there. So what does this mean for all of us here? You know, we're not all Lindas. We don't work for the statewide community college system. We are in desperate need across the country of advocates who mentor, who, if you have a college degree, if you go into college, impart that knowledge and wisdom on a first generation student. Advocates who can tutor, who can help our students have the skill set to be able to pass simple math, English, science classes throughout junior high and high school. Volunteer for your school's career days. Let our first graders see you or see them in you, and share your experiences. Diversify your professional teams is what I would say. Raise money if you can for scholarships. That goes so far for our kids. And raise money for nonprofit organizations, of course, who are already doing this work. I'll go ahead and close with just one quick quote. It's a quote from Lilla Watson. She's an Australian academic, activist, and also an artist. I'm sorry if this quote is old to you. It's new to me, and I'm excited about it. Lilla says, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together." Why do I say that? It's because to be able to have a nonprofit such as this that strives, and we're not there yet, but that strives to be able to serve with the idea of mutual kinship, that our students are giving as much as getting to their mentors and tutors who work with them day in and day out. And we need to be able to understand that we're all in the same conversation together, and make sure that service is a series of acts of mutual kinship, as opposed to a charitable checklist item or something like that. And that plays into our pillars of mutual kinship, cascade mentoring and generational mentoring, as well as Indigenous leadership, where we have community-driven programs.
Beautiful. I see there is a question that Norma has. Norma, I promise we're going to ask that question of Christian. I want to take a moment to ask one question of Brenda, and then we'll come back to Christian, just so that we make sure we're able to hear from both. But Norma, I promise we'll get to your question. But Brenda, the question we wanted to ask you, so given all that we went through in 2020 and still going through in 2021, what are 2 or 3 of the best ways congregations can support one another through grief and trauma and so much loss, and especially with persons who are more vulnerable to substance abuse?
No one wakes up and decides, I want to be an alcoholic. I want to do drugs. It is the result of so much pain and trauma and the burden of grief and shame and guilt that people carry. The weight is so heavy. As recent as yesterday, I funeralized a young man, 27 years old, left behind 3 children who was shot and killed by his friends or so-called friends. My godson was shot and killed. Violence has become so systemic in our society. There's so much abuse. So many people are just going through, and then to have the pandemic on top of it, and to have people closed into homes where they're not being treated well, and being if you're living with an abuser, what is that going to do with you? And so people turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol. And one of the things that I was talking with another woman whose son had gotten shot and killed. And people would ask her in church, call her, how are you doing? How are you doing? And she's like, how do you think I'm doing? Ask me another question. How do you think I'm doing? Ask me another question. This was a strong woman who was just so gifted in so many areas. And yet her family was hit with this tragedy. And she found herself going from a person who basically people turn to for support and help, and she just had so many strengths and gifts, to a person that began to drink. Her mental health deteriorated. She went into deep depression, closed herself off. And that's just one of so many countless people that are all around us. So one of the things I would share is that we have to, as a congregation, make sure that mental health is a priority, that we are speaking to and providing supportive services, or at the very least, helping people know that getting help is okay. There's been a stigma over the years, nobody's going to know my business. I'm not crazy, the whole bit, but yet they know inside they're not well. As we are reaching out and really trying to be a support and partner with people. And I love the saying that Christian just shared from the young lady he works with. I love that. Can you come alongside me so that we can be liberated together? We're not fixers of people. People know they're hurting. They know that they're not right. They want things to be better. They don't always know how to get there. But if we partner together, and this is huge problems around us, so systemic. So being able to collaborate. What I failed to say earlier that I wanted to make sure I said, we could not do this ministry just by ourselves. We have had so many fabulous people, so many partners in ministry, American Baptist Home Mission Society, the American Baptist Women's Ministry, the Sheriff's Department, the City of Springfield, banks. We've had banks that would come, and they would come in and give workshops on how to handle money, because people, if they've been dealing with drug use for years, they have lost the understanding of how do you just handle money. So learning how some of the basic life skills, there's so many things that people need to learn. We have a nun that's working with us from a Catholic church. And they've been some of our biggest supporters, and just being able to be the hands and feet. And so I can't emphasize enough to reach out. We're not superheroes. We are passionate about being able to come alongside someone, hear their pain, hear their story. The other thing is, I was blessed to be able to serve on a panel around trauma and grief a few weeks back. And we spoke about how within our church communities, we haven't been so good around how to address, when a death happens or a tragedy happens, we may gather around that person right in the beginning, but how this is a journey, and people need to have support, and they need to have assistance on an ongoing basis. And as Christian had shared, how you have a group of people that just wrap around this family, and just let them know that they're not in this by themselves. We have wonderful people that just do that for the folks in our houses, that are just there for mentorship, and mentorship is huge for us, to be able to have someone that they can walk alongside, they can call at any time. And so to be able to identify people to do that. And then lastly, I just wanted to lift up, I had created a list around 10 things churches could do around to make our churches more recovery friendly, so that we're bringing to the forefront not only recovery but mental health. Because if someone has been in addictions, more than likely there are mental health issues as well. And so as they're struggling with their self-esteem, struggling with guilt and shame, struggling with anxiety, struggling with just maybe bipolar disorder, all kind of things that someone might be struggling with, that they're not identified as a person with this issue. You are a brother, you are a sister that may need some help right now, and it's okay. We're not here to judge you, and that's one of the main things that they feel. They don't want to feel judged. They want to be cared for. They want to be loved, just like we do. We all want to be cared for and loved. It's just that sometimes we're up and sometimes we're down, and we need to be able to be that strength for one another. And so in the addiction and recovery and mental health ministry, it's very challenging. I'm not going to lie, it's very challenging. You have to be able to support each other, those that are working together. We have to be able to check in with each other to make sure that we're responding correctly. It's a lot of heavy duty things that can happen. But in the end, we have to remember the goal, and that is that we know that anybody can be healed. Everyone, if given the right tools and support and resources, can be restored to a healthy and happy individual, so that they can use their God-given gifts and talents so that they go forward with the purpose that God has laid on their life. And so just wanted to share those few things.
Thank you so much. And Reverend Lammie, I do want to ask if you can provide to me that list of 10 things that you said that can help.
Sure will.
More, I will make sure that this community receives it as well. So our time is coming to a close, but I do want to make sure we ask Norma's question, which was Norma Williams to you, Christian, said, first, congratulations on your Hoya Scholars Program, and wants to know what is the average age of the parents who are part of the program? Is there an average age?
Thank you for the question, and thank you everyone so much for your wonderful wishes in the chat here. For our mentoring program, that primarily for our high school students, so they'll work as high schoolers with volunteer academic mentors, and among our mentors, all of them are volunteers. About a third of them are current college students at our local universities. Another third are working professionals, and then typically around a third are retired individuals from different lines of work as well. Through our Parent Academy, we don't have specific mentorship for our parents, and to answer your question, the vast majority of them are middle-aged, mid to late 40s, who do have kids from a wide range of ages. But we do see some incredible things among peer leadership with our parents. Our parents are very much becoming peer leaders. For example, right now we have one parent, her name is Olga, who's actually training to become a co-facilitator for our Parent Academy series, so that she'll be able to teach that class to future cohorts of parents from the neighborhood. And of course, that plays into that idea that we were talking about earlier of Indigenous leadership and making sure that the programs are coming from within the communities themselves. One of the things that we love to do with the parents is have mentor, tutor, student, parent days. And so that's what I miss the most, I think, because of COVID, and what I can't wait to get back to. It's making sure that we have a community of individuals who can all come together and, needn't worry about language barriers in that mix, but we do have some wonderfully hearted parents, mentors, and tutors who we love getting together, and that peer guidance does happen in those forums.
Wonderful. I believe we have time for one more question, and then after that question, if it's offered, I will turn it back over to Dr. Campbell, and we'll continue with our evening.
Well, I have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. What Brother Christian had presented and the whole night, it reminds me of the Head Start model that having partners and providing for parents to be lifelong educators, and having strong advocates for community advocates as well as parents. So this is really not only needed, but this is a breakthrough that you have done great community assessments and for interest of the community. I like what you're doing. I like the fact that those who have probably would have given up, you've given them a new opportunity, a new beginning to see something that maybe they didn't see in themselves. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's powerful. And my question, I just want to ask one question. Do you plan to expand from where you are to maybe the East Coast?
Thank you so much for the wonderful comment and question. It is such a blessing to be able to be in our own, neck of the woods here in Fullerton. And what we've learned throughout the last 15 months or so is that there is an already existing incredible tapestry of partners and organizations who are doing different things, but who have the capability of coming together to do something greater. When COVID first emerged, without any prior disaster relief experience, our organization partnered with nearly a dozen local churches here, and were able to put together a mobile food pantry for families in our neighborhood. Over the course of those first 3 months after COVID had hit, we had provided over $80,000 worth of groceries, essential supplies to over 500 of our community families. And that is just a testament to the community being able to come together. What I love about partnership opportunities such as this, such as COM, American Baptist Ministries, is right now, for example, Lisa, as you know, we're working with Maryland with the Ritzpa's Children Academy. And so, I've been very prayerful about this, and we're very particular about our mentoring curriculum and how we work with 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Those are 4 different conversations in and of themselves. And so we're working closely with Maryland right now to put together a curriculum from K through 12 that can be used in Ritzpa's Children's Academies going into the future. So the building may not say Hoya Scholars on it, but there are certainly wonderful opportunities to be able to share and collaborate and make sure that mentorship happens everywhere.
Absolutely, and it is a model that we are seeking to have replicated and figure out the components of it for the very purpose that you're describing, Dr. Kendricks. So we do thank Christian for his generosity in being able to share this model with partners that he in Ritzpa's Children Academy is one, and you'll be hearing more about that in the months to come. But yes, you've identified, Dr. Hendricks, something else that we recognize that in home mission societies is that same piece of the components that need to be replicated. And as you said, there's a history even of some of this activity, but needing to revive it. So thank you for your question. And I see that Reverend Lammie answered a question in the chat, which is great. But again, I recognize that our time is coming to close, so I turn it back over to the Metro New York leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Lisa. And thank you to all of our passionate missionaries whose inspirational stories have helped us to capture the imagination of what we can do in our own mission field, even as they serve the Lord in places where the Lord has called them. I'm going to just share a brief opportunity for us in ABC Metro New York that I want to encourage us to put on our calendar. And then I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Castaneda. I'm elated to let you know that on Thursday, June the 10th at 7 p.m., we will be calling and inviting our member congregations to join us in a dialogue on racism and social justice and action. The purpose of our event in virtual space will be to dialogue on racism and to provide resources for our churches to act and eradicate racism. And we also are seeking to unify our member churches to be in solidarity in what we are calling American Baptist Church Metropolitan New York Juneteenth weekend, which is June 18th through the 20th. And this will be, on June 10th will be our introduction to it. And then on the 20th, it will be our launch. And so we pray that you will make yourself available for this opportunity. And we look for you to be on June 10th at 7 p.m. and you'll be getting information much soon. Thank you so much. And now I turn this over to Dr. Castaneda.
Hello, everyone. It has been really a very informative and inspirational evening, don't you think? It has been great learning about where and how our family of American Baptist churches is involved in mission. We need to have more of these times, and we will. We will have, we are aiming at ending this time at 8:15 tonight. But perhaps there are some kind comments that you want to have in the chat room as we are closing this evening. First of all, I want to say to you that we will have at least 2 other sessions during the year, virtual mission encounters, we're calling them, to learn more about mission home here in the US States and also overseas. The next one will be in July 22nd, and then September 23rd. We'll have our last one this year. They all are going to be at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. So you will receive the invitations. Please share the information with your colleagues, with people at the church. We just need names and emails so that we can send the invitation ourselves. So you will be receiving details on these 2 programs coming up in the summer. But I want to give a word of thanks to a number of people, the presenters. First of all, thank you, Reverend Brenda Lammie, who you serving as executive director over at New Life Center Recovery. You are serving what a great cause over in Massachusetts, those who suffer from substance abuse. And you have really given us in detail so much of what you do and how God has been so providing to you.
Absolutely.
For your ministry. Also, want to thank obviously the executive director of JOYA Scholars of California. You know that JOYA means jewel in Spanish. That is Mr. Christian Esteban. You did a great job also presenting to us how you are helping junior high and high schoolers over there in California. Yes, they need to become first generation university students. And I commend those both of you for this. God bless you. This is God doing the job through your hands. And may God continue to bless your efforts and bring positive change really to the people you serve. Your testimony have been heard, and we pray that our member churches would join your efforts by giving to the American Baptist has an offering, America for Christ offering, and also any direct giving that is available. We also like to thank, of course, and appreciate how our colleague of American Baptist Home Mission Society, the Reverend Lisa Harris Lee, has facilitated this conversation. Thank you. You are the Healing and Transforming Community Director. So this is evidence of that happening in our country. Thank you so much for making all the connections happen. Fine job. But also, and most of all, we want to thank God for each of you, for everybody who's participating. And thank you for being in this evening hour, for your interest in how and where American Baptists are committed to do mission. We really appreciate everyone who joined us tonight. And although we may not have much time left, I would like, after the prayer that I will have, our closing prayer, if we have a couple of minutes extra, to invite you to write your comments and especially if you have some kind comments to our presenters. But for now, I want to invite you to just bow down your head and pray with me this prayer of thanksgiving. God of love, loving God, we come to you in prayer indeed, with gratitude in our hearts for this day, what is meant to us already individually, but especially at this hour that we have spent together, as we have been listening to such great stories. Thank you, God, for these stories has specific names of those who you love and who have been helped, and there's so many more that you want, that according to your will, you want them helped. Thank you for granting us this sacred virtual space that you give us tonight to share about the efforts being put forward for your sake of healing and lifting the lives of real people. We thank you, God. Thank you for the energies, the skills, and for the call that you have entrusted upon those who serve at the Recovery Center in Massachusetts, of the JOYA scholars in California, for those who work there to help this cause. And thank you for Brenda and for Christian, who have been so generous in giving us their time to share with us of what their agencies are doing. We commit ourselves to hold them up in our prayer. Please, God, make us to be more fully aware of what's going on, and even spark our curiosity to be somewhere, somehow involved with them. We know the needs are great all over the place, but we have learned where needs are specifically with this, our brother and sister. We know that although the needs are great, your love is greater and can reach out to many. So now, God, bless our remaining conversation, that as we depart from our time together, as we leave this space, your peace will still be ours to keep. These things we pray and we hope for and because of Christ our Lord. Amen.